I wonder if that would be better. Might be. I don't know. Does it make a difference? Not really. Let's just go for it. All right. So, alrighty then. It's time for another concept here. So far we've had line, and we've had shape, and we've had value, right? So that's three of the elements so far. Remember, there's only seven of them. So line, shape, and value. So now when you have shape and value put together, you can make a form. That's our fourth one. So line, shape, value, form right there. And so when you think about something, you can take a shape and you can break down complex things into their various shapes. That's cool, right? But the actual three-dimensionality of it, the actual way that it really sticks out at you, we refer to that as a form, that illusion of three-dimensional space. That is a form. Ooh. Okay, anyways, enough of that. So let's take a look at that. So this is a shape, right? So that is a circle. And then when you add light to it, that's when you get a form, really. So form is created by light and shadow. If you are in a cave and there is no light, you will have no forms. They'll be there. You might bump into them, but you won't see them, right? You only get form from value. So we have to take a look at something. Just like you can break things down into simple shapes, you can also break things down into simple forms. So this is a cube, right? And this is a cylinder. And we have to ask ourselves, like, well, are these really forms? And most people would say, sure, of course, that's a three-dimensional cube and that's a three-dimensional cylinder. Okay, well, fair enough. I would say that not really. I would give them a new term. I would say that that is a form structure. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, let's take another closer look at it. So here's our cube right here. And so, yeah, that's a cube, right? It's three-dimensional, right? Sure. Well, but if we look at it a little bit closer, what's that cube made of? It's made of shapes. So that cube is really just a square and a couple of parallelograms. That's what it is. It's really just a bunch of shapes that have been put together. It happens to look like a cube, but is it really a form? Is it really something that is three-dimensional like this? I would say not really, right? And I'll talk about it in a minute why that difference is so important. Why, in my view, this is really a form structure, not a true form, right? Because we're just going to break it down into shapes. Okay. Well, here's another popular one, is the cylinder. Okay, and you say, like, sure, that's a cylinder. It's three-dimensional. It must be a form. Once again, I would say it's really more of a form structure. It's the beginnings of a form, because we can further take that, and of course we've got the oval, that's the top here, and then this part here is a curved polygon. Remember the polygon, right? So it's got different points, and the lines can be straight and the lines can be curved. That's fine. It's a polygon. So you got an oval and a polygon making up this seemingly cylinder, right? So how do we turn these shapes into true forms? Okay, well, once again, it is through light. So just like on this picture of this sphere, the circle becomes a sphere through light and shadow, then the same thing can happen with the cube and the cylinder. You see, when light happens to hit them, then they become three-dimensional. Then they become forms. And in the next couple lessons, I'm going to really show you how to think about how light hits things, how to create shadows and stuff like that. But, one thing at a time. The thing is that whether you are a really good drawer or whether you're somebody who wants to become a good drawer, you've got one big problem, and that is your psychology, like the way that you think about things, right? Basically, what it is that you have symbolic thinking, okay? And so you see things in a series of symbols. You see this and you say, oh, it's a skull. Or you say, like, oh, this is flower, this is vase. And you don't really think about how that is. And so when you go to drawing something, you draw your symbol. So for instance, this is sort of a classic right here. But if I was to ask you to draw a tree, well, most of you would either draw maybe a lollipop tree, something that looked something like that, or you might draw me something that looks like a Christmas tree, and that would be your symbol for a tree. I mean, heck, I've drawn these trees so much, and if you ask me to draw a tree, I might still give you my more advanced version of a lollipop tree, but it would still be a symbol, right? A tree, much like many other trees I might have drawn in the past. Here's my lollipop tree. Here's my pine tree. And it's still symbols. It's just a random sort of collection of ideas that I have about the tree. It's not the tree itself. And so, I've talked to you before about doing your sketchbooks from direct observation. And that's because then you'll be drawing, let's say if you're drawing a tree, you'll be drawing that tree at that period of time. And it helps to break that symbolic thinking. And that's going to take you very far along this way. Because the symbolic thinking can really mess you up. For instance, if I said to draw a cube, most of you, not all of you, but most of you would draw a cube that looks a lot like this. And if I told you to draw a cylinder, many of you, maybe not all, but most, would draw a cylinder that looks a lot like this one, right? So now let's take a look at this cylinder versus, let's say, oh, where was it? This cylinder right here. And we've got a few differences there. And I'll work with those. I'll point those out in a minute. But you can see one is definitely different than the other. If we were to look at the cube, right, we would see that the one cube is definitely different than the other. And it's psychology that's going on here. So, for instance, with this cube, what's happening is that your mind is saying, like, hey, look, the cube, for one thing, it's sitting flat on the surface. So, your mind really wants to make it flat. And your mind also says, well, hey, but the cube is equal on all sides. It's a cube after all, right? So it's trying to stretch these out and make them bigger somehow, right? To fit the psychology of the cube. The cylinder also fascinating, kind of along the same lines, is that we know that the let me get rid of this here, that the oval part, this is a circle, but we know that it's flat, right? And so we come together and we just make these little pinched ends right here, up and here, because we know that it curves out and it curves forward. But we don't really get psychologically the fact that a circle that's been put on its side becomes an oval, right? A circle that is put on, seen from a side view, becomes an oval. Okay, and then once again, just like the cube, the in our minds, the cylinder is sitting flat. So we draw a flat surface right here. When obviously that's not how it looks. And when you look at this, you know it's wrong. And you look at this one, and you say, oh, you know it's right, right? You just do, but you don't know why, and you don't know how to fix it necessarily. Okay, well, that's what we're going to work on. Okay, so now for this next drawing, what we're going to do is this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to divide up our paper right here. So I've got this in portrait, and I'm going to draw really light at first because I want to do a good job of it, and drawing with my whole arm. So I get a pretty good line. Once I've drawn my construction line and I like it, it's good, then oh sure, then I can go ahead and darken it in because I know I want that line, right? Okay, good enough, good enough. So let's go ahead and on the top, we'll go ahead and we'll draw a cube. And on the bottom, we'll go ahead and draw a cylinder and leave enough space for another cube and another cylinder. And let's see what happens. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and I've told you to just draw a cube. How hard could it be? Maybe I'll go ahead and starting with a square, and I'm going to draw my parallelogram. Okay. That's a decent enough cube, right? So I'm going to go ahead and darken that up a little bit. Start it off once again with my construction lines. Okay, not too bad. Alrighty. And then I'm going to draw a cylinder. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and draw an oval. Nice sort of flat oval. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to draw another little oval right here. And then I'm just going to connect those. So here I'm going to bring this down. And I'm going to bring this down. Oh, good thing I drew light. I want to make that oval a little bit bigger. There we go. That looks better. See, but I drew light first, right? Construction lines, light. And then I could go ahead and I could put my nice dark emphasis lines right there. Cool, right? Zoom. And I could have this one right here. Just go all the way here. Maybe start on the side and just work your way down. Okay. And then this little extra that I got, well, I drew light, so I can erase that. And please erase, don't leave your construction lines there. Okay, good enough, good enough. So that's pretty good. I've got my little cube and I've got my little cylinder. Okay, so how did we do? Well, even though I warned you guys that a lot of your cubes might end up looking like this, and even though I warned you guys that a lot of your cylinders might end up looking like this, and even though we just drew those two together, even though, right, a lot of your stuff is going to end up looking a lot like this. See? And it's not your fault. It's not your fault, right? The most careful amongst you probably got some things that were pretty decent, but most of you probably something along those lines. Maybe yours is a little different, but I almost guarantee you a lot of you aren't going to have ones that look right. And it's crazy because it doesn't seem like it should be that hard. And yet it is. It is for a lot of people. It's not your fault. It is. It's that psychology. It's really, 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 really hard to overcome this psychology. And it's cool because it has served you well. You don't have to think. Like, let's say you're walking down the street and, you step out into the street and here comes a car. You don't have to think about, car. It's kind of a, shape like this, and it's got headlights like this, and it's got those tires that are going here and a windshield. And by the time you thought about all that, you got ran over, right? Instead, your mind just thought symbolically, bam, car, right? And you got out of the way, and it was good, and you got to go on to your, the candy store or whatever, and buy your candy and whatever, right? Whatever it is that you were into. And so that's cool. That's your symbolic thinking. It's really deep. It keeps us from getting, eaten by lions or whatever. Okay, because we don't have to think about things all that deeply. Okay, so but for drawing, especially for observational drawing, we've got to kind of break that. And so whether you're in the ceramics class, if you're in the computer class, or if you're in the art class, you want to recognize that this is an issue and you want to move beyond it. How are you going to move beyond it? Well, one was awareness, and the other is just practice. It's just practice. So I would say take this and put it aside for just a little bit and get yourself some more paper and just start practicing, practicing, drawing a lot of them. And so practicing just what I had done before, right? So draw a square. And so when you're drawing that square, remember one side, then the other side. Same as like when I was doing the parallelogram. Okay, then the bottom and then the top. That's going to help you to get a pretty decent square, right? When you feel that that's good, sure, you can darken it in. I'll darken it in. I know it's sometimes hard to see pencil, in these videos. So, if you're using a phone to view this on, then, turn up the brightness a little bit, turn up the contrast a little bit. That will help. Okay, so there's my square. So then, parallelograms. So the best way to draw those parallelograms, especially for a cube, is keep it parallel. So just nice and light, shoot it out, shoot it out, shoot it out. Don't think of it as a cube, because if you think about it as a cube, you're going to get all messed up and you're going to get, some crazy thing like this. So just think of it as a series of shapes. Once again, right? So I've got my square, that was easy enough. Got my parallelograms, that was easy enough. See, because I just got my things shooting off to the sides. And then we're going to go here, and we're going to go here. And pretty good. And once I've got that, that's cool. I can erase because I drew really light. Nice. Okay. And I can darken it in. And go ahead and, do a bunch of those. Do a bunch. And each time, take a look at it and try and get one better than the other, better than the other, better than the other. And you know what you can do too, like I was mentioning before, measure. Your eyes, sometimes your eyes have a hard time seeing, but measuring can help you. Measuring will really help you to get things right. Because if this is a parallelogram, then that means that these sides must be the same. They've got to be. Otherwise, it's not really a parallelogram, is it? So here, here. Is it right? Is it not, right? Check it, measure it. Okay, so that's the cube. Do a whole page full of cubes. Wonderful. And then the cylinder. Once again, a lot of you guys are going to be doing this bit right here. Here's the back, here's the front, right? And then we're going to come down, and then we're going to have some semblance of a bottom. Totally wrong, right? Don't do that. Don't do that, right? With the cylinder, go ahead and draw your oval. Draw your oval. Connect them. And you get your cylinder. And when you feel like you've got something that's pretty good, you can erase any lines that you don't need. And later on, if you're shading or something like that, you might not need to even erase much of anything. And when you've erased whatever you don't need, then you can go ahead and you can darken up those lines. Make them really nice and strong like you mean them, because you did. Because you know they're in the right place, because you made nice, light construction lines. Boy, if I could get you to do anything, it would be that. Just draw lightly. When we're done with this drawing intensive, if there's one thing you could remember, always draw lightly. Okay. So anyways, that's it in a nutshell. And here, once again, do like a bunch of them, a massive amount of them. You know what else you could do? Is that you could try even drawing through. So you see how I've got this one here and I've got this one here? Really draw through on some of these guys so that you can see with the cylinder, it's pretty obvious. So I've got the oval. Well, it's a good thing I drew lightly on that one. That oval was terrible. All right, here's the oval. And maybe, even like emphasize this back line. So you can see, yes, how that works, how it's the same on the top and the bottom. Super important to get that concept that, yes, there's a second oval there. You don't see it, but maybe on some of them, show that a little bit, right? Do a bunch of them. Do like 10 of them. I don't know. Do 20. Do a page worth. Practice, practice and understanding is what's going to do it for you here. Here on the cube, let's see, I know I've got one here. Yeah, here we go. So here's the cube, basic visual illusion here. But once again, drawing through, drawing all the way. So let me see, where'd that little page of cubes go here? Okay, so as I was saying, on the cube, draw through some of those too, and see how they connect. Like, so let's say you're drawing your cube like this, and you've got your square, side to side, top and bottom, and you've got your lines just dashed off. Just dash them off quickly. Boom, 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 and then connect them. Okay, so you'll know that if you've done this right, if they are truly geometric, then when you bring this down here and this over here, they should connect and make the same parallelogram. So you should have a parallelogram on the top and the bottom. I mean, and this is getting all confusing looking, but think of it this way. If you had a square and another square, kind of the same way as we were drawing the cylinder, if you think about it, where we had the oval and the other oval and just connected them, you would see how you have this cube right here. Hopefully you can see that. And so, like I was saying, maybe go ahead and darken in the lines that you know you would see. Darken them in like you mean it. But also maybe leaving some indication of the lines that you wouldn't see. Some indication of that. Because later on, you'll see that how making a form or a form structure also really helps in drawing complex things. Okay, but more on that later. I don't want to overwhelm you with stuff. All right, times 10. Okay, times 10. And do them the right way as best as you can. Okay, cool. Practice and understanding. And then I want you to come back and I want you to try and draw again. So maybe those will work out much better. Then your second one should be much better than your first. So this is drawing 7, line, shape, and form structure.